Ministers, members of the delegation and friends from the media. We will now have a brief media, following which the ministers have agreed to answer to a couple of questions. I now request the External Affairs Minister of India to make his...
Allow me to welcome Julie Bishop, newly elected Member of Parliament and Foreign Minister of Australia, who I had the privilege to meet in Perth on the 31st of October this year for our framework dialogue where we discussed the entire range of issues, bilateral issues. Of course, we already met previously in New York during the UN General Assembly, and then subsequently in Perth for the Aurora meeting, which is the renamed Aurora Association that we are both members of. We have handed over the chair to Australia, and we continue to work as part of the Troika with Australia and Indonesia, who will in due course succeed Australia. We again met at Chudam, which was in the last 3 days in Sri Lanka, where again I think we were able to work very closely together in the spirit of the Commonwealth, looking at a host of issues that concern the world and certainly Commonwealth. I also had the privilege to meet with the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of Australia, Prime Minister Tony Abbott, who had a very good meeting with our Prime Minister in Brunei on the margins of the East Asia Summit. We are looking forward to Australian Prime Minister coming to our country. We are greatly impressed and indeed grateful that we thought of early visit to India, and perhaps we could have found a slot at this time, but for a large number of visits that were already slated. Therefore, we are looking at a very early slot next year. Both of us agree that we will work, and that slot is very important that we get the Australian Prime Minister to come here in response of his very generous indication that he wants to begin a very fruitful donor visit to India. We have a host of things which are on the landscape for us now. Civil nuclear energy cooperation talks. And the Minister will tell you more about this. This is on the 26th and 27th of November. We have both worked hard, and as I said, the Minister will tell you more about it. We are scheduling the energy dialogue early 2014 when this context in Ahluwalia will visit Australia. We welcome the positive investment regime for Indian investments in energy and resources sector. We already have, I think, an impressive footprint on the Australian soil, and I hope that a larger number of Indian companies will look forward to investing in Australia. The CEO's forum will meet very soon, and this will be the necessary combined effort of the private sector cooperation to complement and supplement what we can do as governments together. My colleague, Mr. Pallab Raju, has been to Australia recently, and he is very keen on the growing knowledge and skill sector cooperation that we have. I want to share with you that our interactions in ASEAN East Asia Summit, Aurora, which I just mentioned, and of course G20, where Australia will now take the chair. We hope that in G20, Australia's stewardship will help many of the ideas that we are working on together to find root in the attempts that we are making at influencing the world. I'm very grateful to the Australian government. I want to thank the Foreign Minister for a very successful Pravasi Bharatiya Divas that we just concluded in Sydney. This was on 10th and 12th of November. And of course, for those of you who are encouraged by our conversation here in our press conference, when we travel directly to Australia, I can recommend to you Air India, which is now open direct flights to Sydney and Melbourne. That is not to say that the Australian Airlines are any less, but it's an important signal that I believe we have given to our friends. We believe that we have extremely fruitful, growing relationship, and that must be rewarded both symbolically and substantively by both public and private sector of our country. I look forward to many more discussions and are working together in various fora. I'm sorry that the Minister could be only for a few hours here in Delhi, but I'm sure she will tell you about exciting visit to Mumbai. I hope that whatever she hasn't been able to do this time, she will come back soon, and then we have more time to present Delhi and other parts of the world in a more fruitful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Foreign Minister Khurshid, for your very warm welcome on this my first visit to India as Australia's Foreign Minister. I have been here before, but I wanted to ensure that I was able to visit India very early on in my tenure as Australia's Foreign Minister to underscore the significance that we attach to the Australia-India relationship. As Foreign Minister Khurshid has indicated, Australia and India's economic and security and strategic interests converging in unprecedented ways. The signing of these two agreements is just an indication of the breadth of the deeper engagement that we want to see between Australia and India. When we met in Perth at the Indian Ocean Rim Association meeting, or our dialogue on the day before, and then at the IORA meeting, we found that there are so many areas where Australia and India are working closely together. In the economic field, we see a significant increase in investment from Indian businesses in Australia, and we very much welcome the around $10 billion worth of Indian investment in the Australian economy, particularly in the mineral and resources sector. We also encourage Australian businesses to invest in India, and during my meetings here in Delhi and also in Mumbai, I was struck by the enthusiasm that Australian businesses have for investing in India and doing business here. We hope that Australia and India will be able to conclude a closer economic cooperation agreement or a free trade agreement. I think both our governments can be ambitious yet pragmatic in approaching the negotiations for such an agreement, and ensure that it will be in the interests of both countries, mutually economically beneficial for our two countries. In the area of security cooperation, we're seeing deeper engagement between our navies. They will begin joint exercises in 2015. We are also working closely together on maritime security, not only through IORA but bilaterally, on counter-terrorism, on cyber, and these are issues where we can support each other, share information, share ideas, and have a deeper and closer engagement. We see great opportunities for Australia to be a trusted and reliable supplier of energy and resources for India's needs, and we recognise India's need for energy security. Not only are we supplying coal, hopefully LNG for Australia is a significant export of LNG, we also hope to conclude our civil nuclear cooperation agreement for the supply of Australian uranium. It has been the consistent position of the coalition in Australia that we should supply Australian uranium to India. In the context of that, and consistent with our desire to conclude such an agreement, the Australian government has decided that we will support India's membership of the Nuclear Suppliers Group. And I have informed Foreign Minister Khurshid tonight of the Australian government's decision. We've given it detailed consideration since we came into office, and we believe that it is appropriate given India's strategic importance in our region and globally, given India's record of non-proliferation. We think it's appropriate that they should have membership of this group, so Australia will lend its support. We hope that the Civil Nuclear Cooperation Agreement can be concluded. The negotiations will continue for a third round on the 26th of November, and both sides will continue to negotiate in good faith, and I feel sure that we'll be able to conclude an agreement that suits both sides. There are so many other areas of engagement that we've hardly touched upon this evening, but have been the subject of detailed discussions between us over our meetings, that number about 3 or 4 at this stage, including in the agricultural area, in education, particularly as we welcome so many Indian students to Australia in the higher education sector and in our vet sector. The Abbott government has also announced that we intend to introduce what's called Australia's New Colombo Plan, which will be a government-backed program to provide young Australian undergraduates with the opportunity to undertake some of their studies at a university in the region. And while undertaking those studies, they'll also have the opportunity for an internship with a business operating in the host country, either an Australian or a host country business. We have a pilot program to commence this rather grand initiative, because we're talking about thousands of students over time, in 2014, and we hope that shortly thereafter India will come on board as one of our partners in Australia's New Colombo Plan, so that we will see a generation of young Australians going the other way, coming to India to study in your higher education institutions. We've also talked about the water partnership that Australia and India have, and it's going to its second phase. There have been a whole range of issues where we are cooperating extremely well. Our trilateral arrangement with Indonesia, Australia, India, Indonesia, born out of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, will also see us spending a lot of time discussing matters of mutual interest, whether it's maritime security, trade and investment, disaster relief management and the like. So I look forward to a broader, deeper and more diversified level of engagement with India, and I truly believe that as the Prime Minister makes arrangements to come here early next year, we will see even greater cooperation between our two countries, and I'm confident that the best days of the Australia-India relationship still lie ahead of us. Thank you.
The ministers have agreed to respond to 2 questions. The first question is from Parul Chandra, Asian Age.
Good evening to both of you. There is a perception that the civil nuclear negotiations between India and Australia are getting delayed because of Australia's insistence on IAEA plus guarantees, which India is reluctant to commit to. So did this issue come up for discussions today, and have the two sides been able to agree on any kind of time frame by when the negotiations will be completed and an agreement signed?
I don't see any delay in the negotiations. In fact, they are reaching the third round on the 26th of November, and I believe that those negotiations are going ahead. I'm sure our negotiators are preparing to be here on the 26th of November, so I don't see any delay at all. There is no specific time frame because we want to get the agreement right, but I won't go into the details of negotiations because, of course, I don't want to preempt our negotiators, but I feel sure and I'm confident but then we'll be able to reach agreement and conclude such an agreement. As far as Australia's attitude towards selling uranium to India is concerned, we have long held the view that our country should be supplying uranium to India, and I think that our announcement tonight that we support India's membership of the Nuclear Suppliers Group indicates the level of support that we have for India, its record of non-proliferation and its strategic importance.
The next question is from Ms. Stephanie March, ABC.
Minister Bishop, today Indonesia has recalled its ambassador to Australia following revelations that the Australian government has been spying on the Indonesian president, his wife and senior ministers. The Indonesian government has asked for an apology and an explanation. China to do to repair it.
I certainly take on board the concerns expressed by the Indonesian government. We note their deep concerns, but as I have indicated on a previous occasion, it is not the practice of any Australian government to comment on intelligence matters, and I intend to maintain that practice and that principle.
This has gone beyond intelligence matters, though. It's become a massive diplomatic incident. What are you going to do? Have you spoken to Martin Lagoa? I understand he's been trying to call you this evening.
I'm not going to give a running commentary on this matter, but I can assure you that I am aware of Minister Lagoa's concerns. I'm aware of the concerns of the Indonesian government. I take them seriously, the Prime Minister takes them seriously. As we've said on other occasions, we value the relationship with Indonesia, and the Abbott government will work very hard to ensure that that relationship continues to be strong. It's in the interests of both nations. I suggest that we continue to cooperate as much as we can across a whole range of areas, and we're determined to ensure that the relationship continues to flourish. We are aware of their concerns and we take them exceedingly seriously, but I'm not going to comment on intelligence matters.
And Minister Khurshid, how do you feel about the revelations that Australia has been spying on the leaders of its friendly neighbours? Are you concerned that Australia may be spying on India's leaders? And would you also like an explanation from the Australian government about these revelations?
We are really looking at a positive relationship. We are looking at signing an agreement on the nuclear matters, civil nuclear cooperation. That's not something that happens between nations that don't trust each other. We have trust. We have a very wholesome working relationship. And I do understand that periodically between nations issues arise, sometimes blown out of proportion, sometimes based on some act of individual, sometimes systemic failures. But these issues arise, and it is for nations between themselves bilaterally to settle these issues. We know each other, foreign ministers know each other, just for this, to work together for a better destiny and future for their respective people, and indeed to be able to address anything that happens which may cause an impediment or derailment or slowing down the relationship. So I think that I can say this with confidence that I'm sure that two friendly nations like Indonesia, Australia, if there is an issue amongst them, they will be able to find appropriate solutions and appropriate ways to address it.
Thank you very much. With that, we come to the end of this event.